Hello, my name is Steph Houghton, and this is my new YouTube channel, the 1215 Project, where we're going to discuss the history and laws and constitution of the United States. And I thought that for this first video, since we're all stuck at home doing the coronavirus thing, that we might talk a little bit about where the government gets the authority to confine us to our homes, forcefully isolate people, close down businesses, etc. Because I mean, after all, this is supposed to be a free country, and people quite reasonably might ask, what is the source of that power? And so, to answer that question, you sort of have to look back at history. When the then colonies declared independence from Great Britain, they one of the things that had been struggled over, of course, was the whole issue of taxation. And the whole point of the issue of taxation was the issue of legislative authority. That under English law, it was only Parliament that was allowed to tax, and because that was the source of its power over the crown. Because the crown couldn't get money without acts of Parliament, therefore the crown had to listen to the legislature's complaints about what maybe they were doing wrong. So it's oversimplified sometimes when people say the United States was founded on a tax revolt, which is absolutely true, it was. But the point of the tax revolt was not just the taxes, though people did care about that as they do now, but that that if the crown could just take people's money, then they could just do anything. And so therefore, that was really the big complaint. And what they were saying was, well, we have our own legislatures, the colonial assemblies, and we are Englishmen just like you back in the old country, and that, as your parliament has the power to tax you, our assemblies have the power to tax us and to legislate for us in all cases other than imperial external legislation. And so that's the background, was that what are now the state assemblies and state senates, the state legislatures, are descended from the colonial assemblies, and they basically claimed the same power that they claimed during the Revolution, which was the same power as Parliament had, which was, in essence, Parliament's opinion of its own power was that it united in one body the monarch, the nobles, and the commoners, and therefore it spoke for everyone, and its power was basically plenary. And while there's no absolute power under the American system, obviously all the state governments are subject to the Bill of Rights and to limitations on their power in the Constitution, both as originally passed and as subsequently amended. But the basic claim of state power is that they have plenary power to pass legislation to protect the health, safety, morals, and welfare of the community. And subject to the limitations in the federal constitution and in the constitutions of the several states, that is the power that they have. And that plenary power is usually called, if you read Supreme Court opinions, you don't see it as much anymore, but it was traditionally known as the police power, the general power of the states. And so that is the power that really, sets, underlies these decisions to close businesses and to confine us to our homes in some cases. And of course, there are limits to that. And I should add, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution quite explicitly, acknowledges that all powers not granted to the federal government are reserved to the states or to the people, respectively. And because it's the people really that have absolute plenary power, right? They can amend the constitutions of the state and of the federal government. Anyway, so where was I? Right. So the issue of where their power comes from, that's it. It's that each of the state legislatures basically claims plenary power over health, safety, morals, and welfare legislation. So obviously that doesn't mean that they can do whatever they want. the states really are limited by the federal constitution. For example, the ninth article of amendment, which says that just because we've only listed 8 articles in the Bill of Rights doesn't mean that that's the sum total of human rights. On the contrary, it says there's a huge number of rights which are also protected, or at least it says that the lack of enumeration in the first 8 articles of amendment shouldn't be held to disparage other rights that are retained by the people, which basically means the area of rights are much larger than the federal than the 8 articles of amendment that list the specific ones. When the Supreme Court looks at various laws to test their constitutionality, what it basically looks at is the question of whether the law addresses a legitimate state interest, and whether there's a substantial relation between the act that's being prohibited and the evil that is trying to be combated. So in this instance, with the situation with the coronavirus, the issue is this: do the states have a power over health legislation? And the answer to that question has traditionally been yes, they do. That's one of the 4 prongs of the police power. And the question, when it comes to the question of is this law substantially related to combating the spread of the coronavirus, is, well, of course, that's because it's no longer a purely legal question, right? And it becomes a scientific question. And so, obviously the court is going to have to take some notice of the opinion of doctors and the medical community to a certain degree. Though obviously it will take those opinions and then do with them as it sees fit. Just to sort of discuss this a little more, because when I say that what they look at is this substantially related, I guess I skipped the question of the rights claim. What right is being injured? And in this case, I think there's several. There's the right to earn an honest living, which runs back in the common law at least to the 14th century. I think it's maybe even the 13th. And then there's the right to pass upon the public streets, which is a very old right as well. So those are both substantial rights. I mean, basically, the first is a well-established common law right, and the other is an obvious personal liberty, the liberty to go where you like. But I think the obvious rebuttal to both of these is that you do, of course, have a right to run a business and earn an honest living. And you do have a right to leave your dwelling when you so desire, but not absolutely. Just as, and those of you who know me know, I'm rather, I won't say fanatical, I'm a very strong adherent to the Second Amendment. But just because you have a right to own an AR-15 or an AK-47 does not mean that you have a right to walk down the street spinning around pulling the trigger. And there's a way in which, obviously, if you have a very infectious disease, which is also highly dangerous to people, that's sort of what you're doing, right? So, that's right. The evil that's being combated is people's right to life, right? Is being protected by combating the disease. And so then, as I say, the question becomes, well, is this a state interest? Yes, because the protection of individual rights is a state interest. One could argue it's the principal state interest. Certainly, if you look more widely at other constitutional systems that are not so different from ours, I think it's the West German Constitution says that the protection of individual rights is the rights and dignity of the human person, I think they say. is, is the foundation of state power. So clearly it is a state interest to protect not only because that's, part of the state plenary power, but just from a more fundamental rights-based analysis, the protection of individual rights is the purpose of state power, and therefore, obviously, protecting people from people who want to waltz around infecting other people is a legitimate state power. And so the question then becomes: is it substantially related? Yes, it is substantially related, because if you let people who are infectious wander around, they're going to get other people sick. So I guess that kind of finishes my analysis for this. I hope you've enjoyed it. I am going to be making some more videos if I can manage to edit the two parts of this that I've recorded it in together into something that's quasi-coherent. You might also like to look at on Amazon. I have a little journal of political writings by myself and a few other people called The Old Republic, and I might, in a future video, sort of talk about that and the principles behind that. So I think my next video will be about, I haven't quite decided. We may do the Second Amendment, but I think we might also look at sort of fundamental issues about law and order, and see if we can't do something interesting with that. So for now, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you around later.